Hey there, fellow explorers. We just returned 3 days ago from fabulous British Columbia, Canada, where we went to Vancouver and Whistler, North America's largest ski town. And in this video, we're going to tell you all about it, what it's like, what the vaccination requirements for Canada are like, what flying into Vancouver Airport is like, what renting a car in Canada is like, what staying at hotels is like in Canada. We stayed at 4 different ones. What eating out at restaurants is like, what visiting stores and their hours is like, what attractions are like, and what it's like to fly out of Vancouver Airport. And we came back, this trip was in October 2022, but I believe this will all be pretty similar in the beginning of 2023, hence the title, What's Traveling in Canada Like in 2022 and 2023. And I'll be walking down those numbers. If you're watching the archive in a day or two, I'll have some table of contents down here. If you're particularly interested in one, feel free to check that right out. And if you're on the live stream, I look forward to hearing your comments and questions as we go through it. All right, so let's go ahead and start with number 1, which is what are the vaccination and testing requirements in Canada right now? And we actually traveled there on September 30th, which this whole arrive can thing and vaccination requirements were still in force. But as of October 1st, 2022, all of the COVID travel requirements to Canada are gone. There is no more proof of vaccination required. There is no more pre-test. There is no more test on arrival. And there is no more need to use ArriveCan, the app that Canada made you use to fill out all that stuff and upload it before you go. So now traveling to Canada, it's just like it was before. Book a ticket, get on a plane, drive across the border, show your passport, and you're good to go, provided you're from a visa-free country. If you're a place you need a visa, well, then you'll have to get one of those too. But traveling there is quite easy now. Oh, and I should point out, in the week we spent in Canada, we ran into tons of fellow explorers that enjoyed Yellow Productions, maybe 2 or 3 a day. So I'm thinking next time we go to Canada, we really need to have like a Yellow Productions fan meetup or something like that. There are so many of you. And by the way, if you are on the live stream from Canada, let us know in the live chat, because I would love to see how many Canadian explorers are represented today. All right, so on to number 2. What is the airplane experience like? We'll start from LAX Airport, and then I'll get to arriving into Vancouver. All right, so leaving here, LAX Airport. This is the first time LAX has felt really busy for me, and we've been traveling throughout this pandemic, and mostly the airports have been kind of dead. Life has been coming back, but the horseshoe in LAX, which is this road that goes through it, quite packed, quite a lot of traffic. In LA, they finally dropped the mask mandate in the airport there, which is nice, and everything seemed pretty much fully staffed up at LAX. And In-N-Out Burger, our pre-departure meal at 10:15 in the morning, was quite busy with everybody else wanting to get their burgers before their early flights. Okay, so now what's it like flying into Vancouver Airport? So we flew United Airlines from LAX to Vancouver. Our home airport that's close to us is actually John Wayne, SNA, Orange County, which is what we flew last year, Air Canada. Why did we not fly that this year? Well, this same time last year, or November, the flights from Orange County to Vancouver were about $200 out of Orange County. Now they're like $600. I think a lot of Americans, in particular from the US, have said, hey, Canada, neighbor up the north, pretty easy to get to. Let's go check that out. And so flight prices out of Orange County were like 3 times this year as what they were last year. Hence, we flew out of LAX where the ticket prices were still $200 round trip. And with 5 people going, that's some pretty easy math. $600 a person, $200 a person, times 5. So we made the drive to LAX Airport, 2.5-hour flight. When we went, we still had to wear masks on the plane, but for you, you won't have to. That's a thing of the past, unless, of course, you want to. Now, arriving into Vancouver Airport, when we went 1 year ago, it was Deadsville. This time, this year, it was still not very busy. There were people in the airport, but it wasn't busy at our arrival time, which was kind of evening times, like 6 o'clock, something like that. You can see here in one of the gate areas that you can see from the bridge going from the planes, not too busy right there, which was nice because there weren't long lines or passport control or any of those sorts of things. All right, now we picked up a rental car. This is number 4. But actually, before I get to number 4, I do have a pro tip for you. If you're flying into Canadian airports and you have a kid and you have a stroller, at least in Vancouver, they have a special family line for customs. So if you have a stroller, well, if it's not a picture of a stroller, I'm sure if you just have kids, you don't have a stroller. But if you have a stroller, you follow the stroller sign, they'll actually call you out and be like, stroller, come over here to the shorter lines. So if you are traveling with young ones, make sure you pay attention to those shorter lines designed for families. All right, renting a car. People always ask, Chris, how expensive are rental cars? Are they still as expensive as I've heard? And here I'm going to say kind of. We booked this trip about 6 months ago, and I'm the kind of planner that like books everything when we book the trip, including the rental car. And traveling with a 2-year-old and 5 people, we needed a large vehicle, so I booked a minivan. A minivan 6 months ago with Hertz, $2,000 Canadian for 1 week. That's pretty expensive. And I was rechecking the prices every week or so, and then about 6 weeks prior to our trip, the prices of minivans dropped from $2,000 to $1,200 Canadian for 7 days. Still expensive, but not quite as expensive as it was from the original one we booked. So I rebooked it to the cheaper price. So if you are going, do expect to pay more for your rental cars than you spent before. The normal economy, medium-sized cars aren't nearly as expensive, but I found the minivans, premium SUVs, big SUVs had like a extra premium from where they used to be. Now pickup was easy. You know, we got for our minivan, we got a fancy Dodge Caravan right there, the total dad mobile. And if you're traveling with kids, rental car companies, including Hertz in Canada, provide free car seats for toddlers. So we did not lug our car seat there. Instead, we just used the one that they gave us, so we didn't have to take our 50-pound car seat along with us. Side note, if you're going to Canadian cities, in particular Vancouver, the parking garages are small, and driving a minivan in these small parking garages can be challenging. I ended up scraping the side of this minivan at the Fairmont Hotel Vancouver. So I booked the rental car with my Chase Sapphire Reserve credit card, and so I am hoping to reimburse the costs to fix it with that. If that all works out, I'll do a whole video about it, let you know. And even if it doesn't work out, I'll do a video about it to let you know what the process was to actually pay off some damages on the side of a rental car. Jeff says, too bad I couldn't get a yellow minivan. I bet if I would have got a yellow minivan, I would not have scratched it on the way out. Hey Now says, that was my van that you scraped. I didn't know that was you. I scraped the side of the parking garage, not your other van. Hey Now, but maybe you got the one I returned. Yeah, that might have been it. Kathy says, we wanted a rental car for 5 days in Cairns. It was $1,200. We decided against it. Yeah, rental cars are still expensive, and I think there are a lot of people that are opting out. James says, Chris, did you use the Floby recently? Before we went to Vancouver, maybe 3 weeks ago. So I don't know, I think I've done one live stream since then. Points Traveler says, my wife rented a car over the weekend. She let them know it smelled like smoke, and when she returned, they gave her $60 off. Hey, better than nothing. And Peter asked if you can rent manuals in Canada. I've never seen be able to do that in the US. I don't know. However, you can't do it in the US. So I don't know that you can from the websites. You might be able to if you like call the rental car company directly. And let's see, Phil asks, are the parking garages as small as the Hyatt Regency Waikiki Beach? The answer is yes, they are as small as that one. I feel like, you know, my live stream a few weeks ago was, is Canada or Australia more British? And I'm gonna tell you, at least in the size of parking spaces, Canada is more British, the big cities at least, with small parking spaces and small parking garages. All right, let's go on to number 5. Oh yeah, by the way, that was the scratch on the side of my minivan right there. All right, the 5th thing about what's it like traveling to Canada is what is it like to stay at hotels, and we stayed at 4 different ones. We stayed at the Westin Wall Centre in Vancouver, we stayed at the Summit Lodge in Whistler, we stayed at the Fairmont Chateau in Whistler, and we stayed at the Fairmont back in Vancouver where I scratched the minivan. So I'm gonna walk you through kind of what it was like to stay in those hotels. This is not full hotel review. Those videos will be coming out in the near future, with the exception of the Westin, Vancouver Airport, because we were just there for one night, but the other 3 will have hotel reviews. And so, starting with the Westin Wall Center Vancouver Airport, we stayed here because it was right by the airport. We were coming in late. We were going to Whistler. I didn't want to do the drive the same night we went in, so we stayed at an airport close hotel. Now, I found hotels in Canada this year as compared to last year to be significantly more expensive. Last year, November of last year, we stayed at the Hyatt Regency in Vancouver, downtown Vancouver, for like 200 Canadian a night. Now it was booking at 400 Canadian a night. We picked this Westin because we could get it for like 180 Canadian a night, but that was when I booked it out 6 months ago. Looking at it a few days before departure, it was booking at about 300 Canadian a night. So a lot of people are going to Vancouver, a lot of people are going to Canada, to the cities, which makes the hotels expensive. Now, the good news is that the Westin Wall Center Vancouver Airport felt like it was all back in full swing. Everything was open, gym was open, restaurant was open. Some of the staff was wearing masks and there was some plexiglass up, but other than that, it seemed like the Westin was back in full swing. Not sure about housekeeping because we only stayed there one night. So then we moved to Whistler and we stayed at the Summit Lodge in Whistler. This hotel was sold out. There were only 2 rooms available and we got the last 2 rooms. I will point out that we had to, even though I booked some of the hotels out a long time ago, we had to make some middle changes, and so we booked this Summit Lodge a week before we went. And a week before we went, completely sold out, just 2 rooms left. Our first night here was like 380 Canadian. Our second night was like 260 Canadian. So expensive for the off season, because you'll see the Fairmont Chateau that we stayed at after this, we actually got for less money, but I booked it out way before and it was sold out too. Like in Whistler, in the off season, being sold out, there's just that many people that want to go. I've found a similar feeling when we went to Hawaii, where it was just like everything's booked out. So a lot of people going to Canada. Now, the drag about staying at this Summit Lodge in Whistler, and here I'll make this a little bit bigger. Won't put me in the corner here. Is that, you know, hanging out with a toddler, the room gets kind of messy. But this hotel had no housekeeping until the 4th night. Well, we were only there 2 nights, and so no 4th night for us, but you know, boy, it was pretty messy after the first night. We could have actually used some housekeeping. That's what the Summit Lodge looked like on the outside. It was in the center of Whistler's Village, which was nice, but it's really kind of a no-service hotel. They don't have a restaurant, they don't have those sorts of things. But it was a room that had like a kitchen, which was kind of nice and had all the kitchen amenities in it. I just am not a fan of the no housekeeping or no housekeeping until 4 days later. All right, so and there we go. That's what the little kitchen looked like. This hotel billed itself as a boutique hotel. I generally don't like hotels that build themselves as boutique hotels because they try to be like all funky and fresh as opposed to just good. I just like a hotel that's good as opposed to, you know, having like a checkered pattern wall like this. That doesn't really add that much to my room experience. All right, the next hotel we stayed at was the Fairmont Chateau in Whistler, and actually this was the reason for booking our trip the days that we did, because when I was just looking at hotels, and as a Amex Platinum card holder, I was looking at hotels that offer the Amex Platinum Fine Hotels and Resorts packages, which basically if you book through Amex Travel and you have a Platinum card, at hotels that offer fine hotels and resorts rates, you get free breakfast for 2, $100 dining credit in addition to the breakfast for 2 every day, a room upgrade, early check-in, and late checkout. And the Fairmont Whistler in October of 2022 had rooms available with the fine hotels and resorts rate for $200 a night. So I'm like, that sounds like a really good deal, because this hotel, the rooms go for like, you know, $500, $600, $700 in season. Out of season, definitely a little bit less. So we're like, we'll go when it is cheaper. And we were upgraded to, because I said it includes room upgrade, and they turned out to be sold out because there was a conference there. They upgraded us to one of the Fairmont Gold rooms, which was really quite fabulous. And for those of you who've never stayed at Fairmont hotels or don't know what the gold room is, it's kind of like a hotel within a hotel experience. This was our gold room right there. And when I say hotel within a hotel, they have like a whole separate check-in area where if you've booked a gold room, you don't check in at the front desk, you go up, in this case to the 8th floor, and you check in at the gold lounge. The rooms are bigger, and then you get access to the Fairmont Gold Lounge for breakfast, like hors d'oeuvres, desserts, and their lounge at the Fairmont, as compared to like a Marriott, Hyatt, or Hilton lounge, isn't for elite members. It's just for people who pay into or get upgraded to these rooms. And so everything in the lounge was so much better than the lounges where they just stick elite members into it. That's the little Fairmont Gold Lounge right there. That's a picture of the actual like buffet area at the lounge. We were there for breakfast, we were there for hors d'oeuvres, we were there for desserts for like 3 days. The Spunky Princess came to know this as the kitchen. We were there so often, she's like, are we going to the kitchen? Can we go to the kitchen? It looks kind of like a kitchen, right? It sure does. And that's what breakfast looked like from the Fairmont. It was amazing. It's like probably, if not the best hotel lounge I've been to, definitely one of the best hotel lounges I've been to. And what was really great about staying at the Fairmont Chateau Vancouver is everything was back in full swing. I felt like I was staying at a hotel from 3 years ago. Like, I would not know there's a pandemic, or there was a pandemic, or that they're having trouble hiring people. Like, everything was open, everything was operational. They were providing daily housekeeping. They were providing turn-down service. And so it was really quite neat. Amber says, good deal for the Fairmont Chateau Whistler. It was a super good deal, which again is why we had to book it. Brennan says, super-sized hotel room. Yeah, pretty big. And Phil says, if they don't have housekeeping, -1 Topher. I agree, -1 Topher if they have no housekeeping. All right, I need to drink. What am I drinking today? Today, well, in that picture, I'm drinking apple juice. But today, I am drinking Paka Japanese green tea. This is Japanese green tea, not made in Japan, but made in Singapore. This is Japanese green tea brewed in Singapore. Still pretty good. And actually, let's see. I don't know if you can see on it. Probably not, but there's like, because it's in Singapore, there's actually like, focus, some like Malaysian characters up at the top too. Interesting. On sale at Tokyo Central. Phil says it looks like a 5 Topher place. And yeah, you'll just have to wait for the review, but I will tell you it did get a really good rating. Peter said, do you still have to pay for the fridge stuff, even in a room that usually costs $600-700? You have to pay for minibar stuff, and we did get a fridge for free in the room, but because we have a kid. So when I said, hey, can we get a refrigerator in the room? They're like, is it for your daughter? I'm like, yeah, we have to keep her milk cold. And they're like, well, in that case, it's free. We'll send a fridge up right away. And the fridge was there in like 2 minutes. So again, all the stuff of like good quality hotels. All right, the last hotel we stayed at was the Fairmont Hotel in downtown Vancouver. This hotel, significantly more historic than the one in Whistler. The one in Whistler was built in 1980, about 500 rooms. The one here in Vancouver, similar size, big hotel. This one was built in like 1916, something like that. Maybe the current iteration's from the 30s, but it's an old classic hotel. And this is like the lobby of the Fairmont in Whistler. I mean, it's really, sorry, Fairmont in Vancouver. It's really fancy. There's like Gucci high-end stores in it. By the way, there are 3 Fairmonts in downtown Vancouver. There's this one, the Fairmont Vancouver, and then there's 2 other ones that are like by the cruise ship terminal. Actually, and there's another one that's by the airport. So I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about this one that's this classic building. This one we were able to get for $200 Canadian a night. Really good rate. And this is another one that we booked this just like 5 days out or something like that, which seemed kind of cheap considering all the other hotels were going for significantly more, including the Hyatt for $400 Canadian, and the other 2 Fairmonts in downtown Vancouver were also going for $400 Canadian, but this one was going for $200. they recently renovated the rooms, which was nice, and it was also kind of neat. I shared like a community post about this, but the room key that I got from the Fairmont Vancouver was made of wood. And yeah, there's actually like a, you know, RFID thing in here that actually unlocked the doors. So that was a pretty neat little touch. What I did not like about it was the parking garage. That was lousy. That pillar just totally jumped out and scratched my Dodge Caravan. And here we booked the regular room instead of the gold room. Well, we just didn't get upgraded to the gold room. But I would say that compared to the Hyatt or this one, we liked the Hyatt downtown Vancouver better than this one. Maybe because the Hyatt were globalists and so we got free breakfast and those sorts of things. But I like the whole situation at the Hyatt better than this hotel. It's old and classic and the room is new, but the hallways smelled a little bit musty and old. Meritocratic Mafia says Fairmont Pacific Rim is the newest one. Maybe that's the one we should stay in next time. Points Traveler really likes the Fairmont Wailea. Kathy says, I always book accommodations a month out, which is good. I do too. And we had to switch it all up because, well, I won't give it away yet. There's a reason why we had to switch all of our hotels up at the last minute, which really kind of stressed me out, but really does have to do with what it's like traveling to Canada right now. All right. Amber says, in Vancouver, we hire attack pillars to scare away a teak tour. Amber, I knew it. That was from you. The pillar said, hey, this is from Amber. Matthew asked, how did we find the food in Whistler? Well, let me tell you, we're gonna get to restaurants next here, number 6. But I'm also gonna say, for all of you here watching the live stream, this Thursday or Friday, one of these days when I put out the next video will be our full vlog from the week in Whistler. I'm gonna go with the approach of bundling it all into one video. So it's gonna be like a 25, 26 minute episode, kind of like a TV show, maybe a poorly produced one, but we'll have like detailed things, the food, you can see it and all that sort of stuff in there, and you can consider this kind of the like director's commentary of our trip. I found the food in Whistler to be good. I found the food in Whistler to be good, but slow. So right here, this is a Roxy restaurant in Whistler, and midweek they have like a 4-course fixed price menu for $41 a person. It was really excellent. The food was excellent. It was so slow though, so slow. It took 2 hours from the time we sat down to the time we could leave, which with a toddler there in a chair is not great. Like, we'd like to go quicker. And we were constantly like, hey, is there any way you can get that food out a little faster? You know, we've got this one right here. And then when we were done eating and I asked for a check, she was like, you were the fastest I've ever seen eat the 4-course meal here. I'm like, oh, boy, how long does it usually take? Like 3 or 4 hours? I don't know. But I will say, you know, sort of from just what it's like to eat out in Canada right now, I found it most restaurants, all restaurants, the tables were back to their original configuration. They didn't really feel spaced out anymore. One restaurant we ate at, this one here, Chuen Juda in Vancouver, still had plexiglass up between some of the tables. I think maybe just because they spent a lot of money on it and fit there and it didn't look too awful, but they didn't have plexiglass up at all the tables. Oh, and by the way, this couple sitting right here, right above me, they were on their way to Maui. They were some fellow explorers that said hi and said they had watched the Yellow Productions Hawaii videos to prepare for their trip to Maui. So if the two of you are watching from Maui, hey, it was good to see you at the Duck House. In Vancouver, we found many restaurant employees to be wearing masks, but not so much in Whistler. And then it would take a long time to get our food. Like at a lot of places, not just a Roxy restaurant, but we went to the old spaghetti factory and it was like 90 minutes from the time we got in to the time we get out, where we can eat at an old spaghetti factory here in Newport Beach and get in and out in 45 minutes. And so I don't know if this is like kitchen staffing issues or if this is just a Canadian thing about like our restaurants aren't really fast. So I saw some people down here in the chat ask about poutine, and yes, for sure, we did have poutine at a couple different spots. One interesting lost in translation moment was at this hotel, Portobello in the Fairmont Whistler. I asked for fries. And what I got were fried potatoes, like whole potatoes that were fried. And I'm like, that's not fries. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, we don't have fries, but we have this. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. They're like, that's how we make our poutine. We make our poutine out of whole potatoes instead of fries. But for those of you that aren't familiar with poutine, poutine is gravy fries, basically French fries with gravy on top, sometimes some cheese curds, depending on different things. We went to a place and we got lobster poutine, which was pretty good. And apparently Costco has a really good poutine. I have not had it yet. A says it's a kitchen staffing issue, not normally so slow. All right, thanks for that report, A. Peter says, I've heard that there are a lot of tourist trap restaurants in Whistler. Is that true? I mean, it probably is. I feel like most resort towns have a lot of tourist trap restaurants. The good news is we didn't eat at any of those. I felt like all the meals we had in Whistler were good. But then again, you know, we're probably the more savvy eaters that are like picking out just the like choice, delicious spots. Meritocratic Mafia says, do we ski? Whistler is really known for its ski slopes. I'm sure it is, Meritocratic Mafia. With a 2-year-old, we're still not ready to go to like icy places. I snowboard poorly. We really like the snow tube, and so we're hoping to do that once the Spunky Princess gets a little bit older. And so that was why we went now when it was cheaper, and so we can't really do the snow stuff right now anyway. Though we did see a whole bunch of little kids in Whistler learning how to mountain bike. Like mountain biking is like the thing right now in this season in Whistler, and they had like 3 or 4 year old like group of 20 3 or 4 year olds like on their little tiny bikes going through town. Clearly the parents went on the big slopes and then they gave the kids to this other, you know, like adventure company to teach them how to bicycle around the city. It was cool. And we're like, oh, how old does the Spunky Princess have to be to learn how to mountain bike? Meritocratic Mafia asked if I had beaver tails. Yes, last time we were there in Victoria, we had beaver tails. We had it twice, actually. There's a beaver tail in Victoria next to the Fairmont Victoria Hotel, which, the Empress Hotel in Victoria. Gaz says, hey Chris, first time I managed to catch a live stream, Northeast UK. Thanks for joining, Gaz. It must be like 4 in the morning where you are, something like that. So thanks for joining in at such a late hour. And John says I should get the Spunky Princess on the slopes around 4 to 5 years old. All right, I will remember that. We got about 2 years to go, but we will do that. Okay, we've talked about restaurants. Now let's talk about what it was just like walking around the town. First in Whistler and then in Vancouver. So masks are not required anywhere really outside in public life in Canada at this point. So you don't have to wear them walking around the city. In Whistler, maybe 10% of the people walking around the city or in stores were still wearing masks. In Vancouver, that number was more like 30%. There were more people in Vancouver wearing masks, maybe being more of a city, being more dense, more prevalent in the Asian population centers of Vancouver than the other parts. But I will say this time different from a year ago, the hustle and bustle was definitely back in downtown Vancouver. When we were there last year, November of 2021, downtown Vancouver was kind of sad. There was like nobody there. But now it was really busy. Tons of people walking around, lots of people riding the public transportation, lots of people at the shops, lots of people eating at the restaurants. And so it was really great to just see people and life back again. And so while it still seemed like Whistler was getting back into the full swing a bit, even though a couple of the hotels were busy. I mean, the restaurants definitely weren't, not all the hotels. So the 8th thing to talk about going back to Canada in 2022 and 2023 is what are the stores, what are the hours like, what's the shopping experience like? And still many stores, their hours appeared shorter than usual. Lots of stores on the operating hours had like temporary stickers placed over them or pieces of paper taped over it, closing at 5, 6, 7 instead of 8, 9, or 10. Now, the good news is that the stores did seem to have life instead of being dead, and stores were inviting customers in instead of keeping people out. When we went last year, in November of 2021, we found a lot of stores that like you just couldn't even go into. You know, you had to like tell them what you want and they'd bring it out to you. But now every store was like fully open for business and invite you in to browse around. One of the coolest spots that we enjoy in Vancouver for window shopping, maybe even eating, is Granville Island. There's a neat food hall there, and there's also a lot of stores. A year ago, the food hall closed early. Now it closed at normal hours, which is 6, and the stores were staying open till 6 or later. We really enjoyed exploring that this time, because last time we were at Granville Island, we were like one of 5 cars in the parking lot, and now the parking lot was full again, which was cool. All right, so let's talk about attractions now. This is number 9, and so one of the attractions we took this time that we couldn't take last time were the ferries that run along False Creek, or the kind of waterway in Vancouver. There's 2 companies that operate them, False Creek Ferries and Aquabus. Both were back in full swing. They weren't running last year when we were there. Now, I will say, riding this ferry, we did see somebody fall in the water trying to get on it, to fall in the creek. Okay, I didn't actually see her fall in the creek, but when we got to the pier, there was a lady who was soaking wet wearing life jackets because they had fished her out of the water. And what happened, because I asked a driver of the nearby ferry, not the one that it happened on, he said he saw what happened. She went to step, I'm gonna make this big, she went to step on the ferry. I should get rid of myself so you can see this more. She went to step on the ferry, and then as she stepped on it, the ferry started to push away from the dock. She didn't know what to do, and so she ended up falling in the water. So this is just one of those like words to the wise that if you're boarding a boat, just be extra careful, because they are on the water and they can come away from the docks. Not a COVID thing, but all right. Now, Whistler attractions, and this is where the story gets a little lame, and so this is where the story is, you should definitely pay attention to what attractions you want to go to, what are their hours, when are they open, and are they still going to be open when you go versus what the attraction advertised when you booked your trip. So the Whistler Hotel was the Fairmont Hotel was the central hotel that we booked our trip around, and then our central activity that we wanted to do in Whistler was to ride the peak-to-peak gondola. So in Whistler, there are 2 mountains, and there are lifts that go up to those 2 mountains, Whistler and Blackcomb Mountain, and then there's a lift, a gondola that connects the 2 of them. That's the peak-to-peak gondola, and sure that you take them to ski or snowboard in the winter, but in summer they operate them as sightseeing gondolas, and so that's cool. And then there's a bridge all the way at the top called the Cloudraker Bridge. That's like a suspension bridge you can walk across. So it's like we wanted to do that. We wanted to ride the peak-to-peak gondola and walk the Cloudraker Bridge. When we booked this 6 months ago, the hours posted on the Whistler website was they're going to be open every day of the week until October 10th, which is basically Thanksgiving Day in Canada. So, till yesterday. So we're like, all right, we booked our trip to go to Whistler midweek when the rates were cheap. And then OC Girl looked, 10 days beforehand as we're like doing final planning, just to like look at the hours, like, oh, what time does it open? So we know what time to get there. And they changed when it was open, what days it was open, when it stopped running. So, sometime, I don't know when, but at some time in Whistler, they decided this gondola was no longer going to operate till October 10th every day. It was going to operate every day until September 10th, and then between September 10th and October 10th on weekends only, which meant that we had to shuffle around our stuff to make sure we got up to Whistler in the weekend, which is why we had to book that Summit Lodge. And then even when we got there, we wanted to do the Cloudraker Bridge, but the lift that was going to take you up to that closed on September 10th and then just didn't reopen again. And so is this due to lack of staffing? Is this due to just not enough people going up there and so they don't want to run the lifts anymore? I mean, I don't really know. But I would say for you going to Canada, make sure check and double check and recheck the attractions, the days and the times that they're open, because in this kind of weird post-COVID, but still in the middle of the pandemic or at the end of the pandemic, whatever you want to, or in the middle of the pandemic staffing issues, hours and days are super uncertain. Yeah, so John says the gondola is crazy when it's windy, but majestic. The good news is there was like zero wind at all when we were there, which made it really hot. Lean into life the English way says it's off season. It's off season, but on their website they advertised it as being open until October 10th. And really for Whistler, then off season 6 months ago was like October 10th to snow, right? So they're like, the summer season usually to operate these gondolas goes till October 10th. And this year they decided to cut it early. And it's not because it started to snow. It's not because it got cold. It's just that they decided they're going to end them early this year, different than other years. And John says yes to all those factors. Something I found really interesting being in Whistler was that a lot of the people who work in Whistler in the service industry were from Australia. So for my Australian viewers on here, like Whistler seems to be like a super popular, like a 1 year like work experience from Australia. I ran into folks from Melbourne. I ran into folks from Perth. So, you know, it's just one of those where like the Australian accent, it's pretty recognizable. And that the Fairmont Hotel bringing us our refrigerator, like, you know, I talked to the guy and I'm like, are you from Australia? And he's like, well, technically no, I'm British, I'm from the UK, but I spent 3 years living in Australia, which apparently gave me a stronger Australian accent than I thought. And Kathy says, yay Aussies. All right, yay Aussies, indeed. I agree. All right, so, you know, even though we had to like move our hotels around, rebook them a week before, which, again, I like to have my stuff planned way in advance, so our lodging wasn't optimal, switching hotels in Whistler. Like I wouldn't normally plan. Why, Chris, why would you switch hotels when they're in the same town and one's 1 mile away from the other one? Because the Fairmont Chateau was sold out. We couldn't add 2 more nights to that one, so we had to stay in a different hotel for 2 nights so that we could then move to the Fairmont Chateau, which we knew was going to be the better hotel to begin with. All right, the 10th thing to talk about is departing out of Vancouver Airport. Then we'll do some Q&A, and then I'm going to give away a spunky princess t-shirt today. All right, but we'll do that in the Q&A time. Then we're going to talk about departing out of Vancouver Airport. So this is one where, as you can see, the airport did not look busy. This is like, what time were we there? 2:30, something like that, p.m. in the afternoon. We got to the airport. Our flight was at 5:30, so we got there about 3 hours before our flight. Because last time a year ago, we were in the security line and the customs line for nearly an hour, and that was the shortcut security line. So we're like, we don't want to be like cutting it that close. We want to get there a bit earlier. And I think 3 hours was a good amount of time because Vancouver Airport and a number of the Canadian airports, particularly flying to the US, they are US pre-clearance airports, which means that you don't clear customs in the US, you clear customs here in Canada or here in Vancouver. And so that means the time you're going to spend that you might have spent in the US, like at LAX Airport or JFK or wherever, you don't spend it there, you spend it here, which means you need to spend more time, you need to plan for more time on the front side of your flight rather than the other side of your flight. So which made the security lines just move super slow. We did get to use the baby line, which was nice, but once we got through security into the actual terminal area, many of the shops were still closed. Not nearly as before, like almost everything was closed. Now just 30% of the stuff was closed. But that's 30% of the stuff that was closed, which meant that the stuff that was open, like the lines were ridiculous. And it was not busy, but just there weren't enough food things open. So if you look here, this is the line for Tim Hortons Donuts at 4 in the afternoon. It's like, 30 people deep because that's like the only food to eat in the terminal. There's actually 2 Tim Hortons locations in this terminal in Vancouver Airport, but only one of them was open, and therefore it had like a super long line. And at the Air Canada lounge, I guess everybody was packing it in there. There was no place to sit at the Air Canada lounge. Luckily, we did get one table, but I thought I was gonna have to like eat my food standing up or something in the lounge. Getting on the flight itself, boarding was a breeze. No masks, no tests, no vaccine cards required to come back to the US for the return flight. And so that was really nice too. We shot a ton of video. The vlog is coming out this Thursday or Friday. Things to Know Whistler will be coming out within a few weeks, and the hotel reviews are coming out too. So lots of great content. If you're new to Yellow Productions and you haven't hit that subscribe button, definitely click it to stay tuned for those videos. If you're watching this a few weeks or months after I've streamed it, then in the description you will find the Whistler playlist that you might enjoy checking out, which will have all these videos that I talked about. You might also enjoy my Vancouver and Victoria playlists. You'll find those in the description too. And the whole Vancouver series is up right now, and so is the Victoria series.
Fellow explorers, it is now Q&A time. If you've got a question, I've got an answer.
All right, fellow explorers, if you're on the live stream, what question do you have? If you asked a question, I didn't answer it before, put a question mark at the end of it, drop it in the chat. If you're watching the archive, I'll answer your questions too. I answer every question somebody leaves on any of my videos at any time. Make sure it's got a question after it, so question mark after it, so I know it's a question. John asked if I got to check out the Enchanted Forest. No, we didn't get to do that one. Some of the hikes that we did the Trainwreck Trail, we did the Sea to Sky Gondola, we did Joffrey Lakes, but you know, that's another one where traveling with the Spunky Princess, we do a little bit less each day than we used to. Lean into Life the English Way said, why Whistler, Chris? A year ago, we went to Vancouver and Victoria, and we love going to Vancouver so much in British Columbia, and direct flights out of Southern California that are inexpensive, and so we're like, we wanted to go back. We didn't get to go to Whistler last time, so that's why we went to Whistler. We've been to Vail, and Vail is the largest ski resort in the US. Whistler is owned by Vail Resorts, and so I'm like, I wonder what that's like compared to Vail. Now, it wasn't in season. We've been to Vail in season when there's snow. I'm curious, anybody on the live stream or in the archive, have you been to both Whistler and Vail in season? If so, which one do you like better and why? Peter says, is there something you always bring back home from Canada? Maple syrup, canned moose meat, other Canadian cliches. Not really. Magnets. I bring magnets back wherever we go. Last time I did bring some maple syrup back, but I found it tasted the same as the maple syrup that I get from Costco. So I'm not a big souvenir shopper, really. Television Hall of Classics says, oh my gosh, it's been like 2 years. How much did the bears grow? These bears, they've grown a lot. They've been eating a lot of premium bamboo. So that's where Tiffany's Take on Life says, what's the favorite place you visited in Canada? Well, Truth in Lending, you know, we haven't explored Canada all that much. This is my third trip to Canada. I've been to Halifax before this trip, and then we did Vancouver, Victoria, and Whistler. So right now it's Vancouver. That's our favorite place of the three. Emin asks if I've ever taken the train. No, not yet. NT says, did I see any bears? Not any live ones. I saw a lot of signs to say watch out for bears. Brandon says, any other Canadian destinations in mind? Yes, we'd like to go to Banff, in particular stay at the Fairmont in Banff. I've heard the Fairmont at Lake Louise, maybe, is nice. I'd like to visit Toronto, and I'd like to visit Montreal. So that's the list of Canadian things that maybe we'll check off here soon. John says the Trainwreck Trail is awesome. It is. Mrs. Clay asked if I've ever been to Lake Louise. No, but should I go? I've heard good things about it. No Filter says Banff. Yeah, definitely. As Jasper, and I don't know, I haven't put Jasper National Park on the list. Kid Blue Creations asked if we stopped in Squamish. We did. We did the Sea to Sky Gondola there, and we did the Britannia Mine Museum that you'll see in the vlog that comes out in a couple of days. Yeah, Amber says she doesn't think my fancy Princess Carrier bicycle would work on the Whistler trip. Probably not. Those are like serious mountain bikes, and the mountain bikers are wearing like armor and these like mega helmets and stuff, so probably not. John wants to know when I'm rolling through Alberta. I don't know, but I'll let you know, John. Valerian says, did you have any moose steak? No, not yet. Matthew asks if I've been to any of the other Vancouver lounges, just the Air Canada lounge in the US departure terminal. Well, I would describe it as a decent lounge. It's better than like almost any other United lounge because it had some good soups and decent wrap sandwiches, although mostly cold, all cold food except for the 2 hot soups that they had. But what was nice was they had like canned drinks you could take with you, bottles of water, and bags of chips that you could take with you on the plane ride for later. Pickles says Montreal and Banff are cool, but hit our Maritimes on the East Coast. All right, thanks for the tip, Pickles. NT says, I should definitely pick up the maple syrup from Ontario and Quebec. All right, I will keep that in mind. And Jeff says, if I go to Toronto, visit the Hockey Hall of Fame. All right, I'll keep that in mind too. Stargazer says, Henderson Hot Springs. As kids, we would skinny dip there. Very cool. Points Traveler says, where will you be traveling during your next trip to Japan? I don't know yet. We haven't booked it. We sort of always seem to go to Tokyo, but looking for some places we can drive around Japan too. Having a toddler, it is easier to drive a car than it is to take a lot of trains, and so we'll probably be looking for something off of the big beaten tourist path. Amber says San Francisco at Christmas worth the time. I think so. I think San Francisco Christmas time is actually a good time to go there because no business travelers are there. Business travelers are what really jack up the prices in San Francisco. So yeah, do it. Television Hall of Classics has comments about how Canada still has analog television. I don't know, I turned on the TV and I watched it, so the analog or digital TV didn't bother me all that much. Pete Nguyen says, Whistler versus Vail makes for more skiable areas in Whistler and Blackcomb. All right, thanks for that perspective on the two. Sam asks, I've been to the Toronto Science Center. No, we have not been to Toronto yet. Heather says, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, the Okanagan Valley is a good choice. Wine, skiing, hiking, touring, and a gorgeous lake. I will keep that in mind too. Yeah, so, our perspective on, so one of these, Vancouver, people often ask, like, Chris, what do you think about Vancouver as a city? And I will say Vancouver as a city, I really like Vancouver as a city. Why do I like Vancouver as a city? I feel like Vancouver has all the things you want in a big city, but none of the problems of a lot of other big cities, or maybe not those problems in as such huge capacity as they are in other cities. For example, big cities often have a lot of pollution. Vancouver, the air seems really clean. Big cities often have a large homeless population. Vancouver has a homeless population, but it's not nearly as significant as its neighbor Seattle down in the south. Traffic is often a huge issue in big cities like New York or Los Angeles, where Vancouver, the traffic doesn't seem to be as bad. There seems to be a pretty functional public transportation system. Hotels in big cities in the center of them are often pretty lousy, but I found the hotels in Vancouver to be pretty good and on the positive side. And I found the food in Vancouver to be relatively inexpensive and really good, particularly if you like Asian food. So that's what we like about Vancouver. Whistler, what I like about Whistler as a ski town, a lot of ski towns, we heard a question about, is all the food just tourist traps? And I found the food in Whistler to be really quite good and not like Auntie Anne's homemade spaghetti from the Mountain Lodge Inn restaurant that has 4 tables at it. That's like in a lot of the ski towns in California, even Lake Tahoe, Big Bear, things like that. The restaurants are just, they exist, and they've been there for 60 years and they churn out the same lousy food. I was watching a Gordon Ramsay thing on the TV today as I was having some pizza lunch. It was playing in the restaurant I was eating at. And he was eating at this Italian restaurant where they had this penne vodka, and he told the restaurant staff in true Gordon Ramsay style that it tastes and looks like baby vomit. It's like, oh, okay, that's good. But that's honestly how I feel about a lot of restaurants in a lot of ski towns. And so I just liked that Whistler didn't feel that way. Like there was actually good food there. I liked that the town felt really nice, and the existence of the Fairmont in Whistler just like puts it up like 27 notches for me, because most hotels in a lot of ski towns are just really, really quite lame. Sam asks if I've been to Montreal. No, not yet, but I would like to go. Meritocratic Mafia says Vancouver Eastside has a lot of homeless and drug problems. And we went through there last time we drove through there. Compared to Los Angeles and Seattle, it's nothing. John says, you got to check out Kelowna for cherry season as a kid. It was hugely memorable. All right, thank you for that tip. Event City says, what is the best thing you, there's probably 8 in Vancouver. What about Whistler? So the best thing we ate in Vancouver, and this one didn't make it into the vlog because we did it right as we left. Like, it was the last thing we did, and I already shot the vlog conclusion scene. We're just doing it on the way to the video. I already packed away my camera gear. Was Malaysian food at a restaurant called something like John 3:16 Malaysian Delights, something like that. If you were just to search for John 3:16 Malaysian, they have 2 locations, one in Richmond and one that's close to downtown Vancouver. Delicious Malaysian food. Great laksa, great char kway teow, great roti. So we really enjoyed that. In Whistler, our favorite restaurant, you will see this in the vlog, was this place in the Fairmont Hotel called Portobello that had porchetta sandwiches. One of the best sandwiches we've had anywhere, hands down. Sam the Man says, Vancouver has seaplanes. Would you recommend using seaplanes to travel to and from Vancouver? It sounds like fun. It's a couple $100 if you want to do it. I mentioned it in the Things to Know video. We went and looked at a seaplane so I could get a shot of it. Sounds like fun if you don't mind going on a small plane puddle jumper. Brandon says that sounded like a typical Gordon Ramsay roast for sure. And Eat Van City says, John 3:16, I'm eating it tonight. Hainan chicken rice. Like, as in you've already eaten it, or you're eating it right now, or you ate it just a moment ago? Yeah, but that place was super delicious. Or that's where you're going. Yes, they do indeed have Hainan chicken rice. And No Filter says, we'll love the Fairmont at Lake Louise. It's stunning. All right, I'm putting that one high up on the list.
Yes, it's the time you've been waiting for. It's time for the giveaway.
All right, fellow explorers, it's time to do a giveaway, and today I'll be giving away a Spunky Princess t-shirt to somebody who can answer one of my questions correctly. So, to win this fabulous Spunky Princess t-shirt right here, you need to answer, what was the make and model of the minivan that we got in Vancouver for this trip? If you can answer that correctly, you will win one of these Spunky Princess shirts shipped to you anywhere in the world. If you don't win one, but you want to pick one up, head over to shop.yellow-productions.com. Order it now. Order one for your friend. Order one for Christmas for your significant other. It's about that time to be thinking about Christmas gifts. And if you're wondering, Chris, when is the next live stream? I'll tell you, it won't be next week. It'll probably be the week after. But if you want to know, sign up for my email list at update.yellow-productions.com. I will email you always a couple days ahead of time before we have a live stream so you know when it is, what time it is, and what the topic is going to be. All right.
And now we have a winner chicken dinner.
Congratulations to A. Stevens. You were the first one to say Dodge Caravan. Some people who said it right after you, Meritocratic Mafia, TL and NT, said it just a few seconds after you, but A. Stevens, you got it right first. Send me a email to chris@yellow-productions.com and I will get that shirt headed right out to you. Let me know your size and your address. Well, fellow explorers, it's always a pleasure hanging out with you. If you want to get your Canadian fix right now, check out that Vancouver and Victoria playlist and check out the Whistler vlog when it's out in a couple days and the rest of the content that'll be coming out over the next few weeks. Well, fellow explorers, as usual, I won't say goodbye because I'm going to see you